I believe that the single greatest secret to success is paying attention. Now, my students struggle with that as well. For example, a couple of semesters ago, I was meeting a class for the first time. I could tell it was going to be a difficult class because I recognized one of the students. He's the kind of student that would walk into my office and ask why he was making an F in my class. And I'd have to say, because there's nothing lower. Number two is to be able to focus on the important. Focus on the important. Again, my students sometimes struggle with it, or just students in general. For example, a couple of weeks ago, my son teaches at Purdue, and he told me about a student that came into his classroom with a T-shirt, and on the front it said, "You can never relive a party, but you can always retake a class." Now, I'm not sure if he were focusing on what I would consider important, but for him, that was what was going on. When I'm out of town, my wife picks up my messages at Northern Kentucky University at home. Now, I'm out of town. She pulls up my email, and here's the first message. "Sweetie, what a pleasant surprise to have email from you already. How is school going? I hope you are not sitting there all by yourself. So, did I really redeem Bloomington in your eyes? I know that you can be so hard to please. Tee-hee. As for me, sitting here staring at this computer screen gives me a headache, so I shall retreat into my book world soon so I don't have to think about missing you. The kitchen just isn't the same without you fixing omelets. And I don't even feel like taking a shower anymore, not without my personal back puffer. Hee-hee. Well, I best be off so I don't have my phone line tied up. Love, Kathy." Now, my email address is boyd@nku.edu. And what had happened, this young lady's boyfriend was named Rick, but she had left off the R. And so I got the email. And my wife accepted that explanation. We had a strong relationship over the years, and she realized that was not a problem. Well, my wife has a great sense of humor, and she thought, I cannot let Kathy stay in the dark about this. So she decided to respond to her. And here's the note my wife sent back to Kathy. "Your email was received. Fortunately for my marriage, my husband's name is Steve. He was in Bloomington recently, however, and he is a professor at NKU. At the present time, I still believe the story he told me about why he went to Bloomington. I can't help but feel sorry for poor Rick, who is pining away, wondering why you don't answer his email. Perhaps this might merit a phone call to determine his actual email address, or to find out if Northern inadvertently assigned to him my husband's address. As for lonely showers, my Bloomington source tells me that a loofah and classical music help a lot. I might add that Steve gives a lousy back rub, and Steve could not find the omelet pan, let alone fix one. Now, if I were this young woman, I think I would want to let it drop, maybe even try to hide out for a while after that. But guess what she did? She wrote back. Last message. Dear Lanita, sheesh. This has definitely been by far my most embarrassing foray into the electronic medium. I can only imagine your confusion and surprise upon finding this email. I am so sorry to have caused any marital problems which are completely unmerited. And then she ends, I only hope that Rick never has your husband for class. But questions can make a huge difference. You may have seen this article. It was in the paper maybe a couple of years ago. Chris Collinsworth, you all recognize the name, played for the Bengals, lives in our town, and is, of course, a national broadcaster. And he had contributed with some other people in Fort Thomas enough money to create a new turf for the football field at Highlands. A reporter was interviewing him after he had done this, and the reporter said, I have just been through the high school at Highlands. And she said, the chemistry lab is way out of date. The biology lab really needs different equipment. Why wouldn't you give money for academics rather than for a football field? And his response was, no one asked. A part of my wife's career was also in third grade, and one day she had a little boy in her class whose name was Derek, and Derek was a talker. He just loved to talk. She said later it was a Friday afternoon. She'd had up to here with Derek, and so she took him out in the hallway for a private conversation. She said, Derek, what is your problem? You're pulling Susie's hair, you're pushing Barbara's books off her desk, and you're writing on Mary Beth's papers. What is your problem? He stood there for a moment and finally said, Mrs. Boyd, my problem is I'm sitting in the middle of a bunch of tattletales. Not only should a speech have a wow factor, I think a speech should have several wow factors. Maybe every 8 to 10 minutes have some kind of wow factor. So before you deliver a speech, I think you should look at your content and ask yourself, are there wow factors in this presentation? Audience's attention is so short. We are so geared to being entertained and being able to surf on the television that we sometimes have a hard time staying with the speaker for very long. I know a lot of times we give data-filled presentations, and I think it's hard sometimes to keep people's attention over a long period of time. But I guarantee you, whatever your presentation, if you can find a wow factor every several minutes, you're going to be able to leave the audience with something that they will take with you. And that's what you're trying to do in delivering an effective presentation. Daniel Webster once said, if all of my skills were taken away from me except one, the one I would want to retain is the ability to speak. For with it, I could regain all the rest. We were on a Gray Line tour on one occasion, and the guide, we were stopping for a break, and as we got off, he said, now remember, you got 15 minutes, and we leave in 15 minutes. Keep in mind, the difference between a passenger and a hitchhiker is about 2 minutes.